You see, most people have no idea how the Bible came to be at all.
Yeah, that's true. Isn't that true?
We in the West tend to imagine it as something that simply fell from heaven, already bound and titled. But the truth is far more curious. It was the Church, yes, the early Catholic tradition, that not only preserved the text, but also decided which ones would be included. The writings we now call the New Testament were penned by people within that movement, and they also adopted older Hebrew scriptures, even though at the time of Jesus the Jewish canon was still unsettled. In fact, the Jewish community didn't finalize what we now call the Old Testament until around 100 AD, during a council at a place called Jamnia. They settled on what belonged, and those texts were eventually compiled into what scholars refer to as the Masoretic text, though the oldest complete copy we possess dates from many centuries later. As for the New Testament, its canon wasn't firmly established until 382 AD, under the auspices of Pope Damasus at the Council of Rome.
Why don't you cry about it? Aaron's B, hey, nice to see you, man. $20, thank you so much for that. Very generous. Finally catching one live. Oh boy, I used to take mushrooms and listen to Alan Watts. Thanks to God, I am over that little phase. Yeah. Christopher, $5. Love the critique of this nonsense. Really is a necessary corner of the internet that Jimbob has created. Yeah.
It was there the Church said, in essence, here are the scriptures given to you by our authority and by the living tradition that has flowed through us from the beginning, moved, as we believe, by the Spirit of God. So whether you like it or not...
Does he not know the Septuagint? Apparently not.
I
mean, his historical account is kind of like irrelevant. Because even if you grant these types their own historical account, when you get to the crux of their argument, they essentially are anointing themselves some sort of spiritual guide. And watch, as he describes spirituality, it'll be very nebulous.
Historically speaking, you receive the Bible because the Church said...
He's upsetting my dog.
This is it. And the Church also claims the right to interpret what it means, again, as a community guided by the same Spirit. Now, you can accept that or disregard it. After all, anyone can write a book and claim these words were revealed to me by the divine. You're free to...
Well, not anyone could make the claim, but no, not anyone can justify and defend the claim.
Believe that, or not. The Hindus hold that the Vedas were spoken by the gods. Muslims are certain the Quran is the direct word of Allah. Buddhists too have their sutras, which they revere not as the word of a god, but as timeless expressions of awakened wisdom.
Wow, you add a little violin and a little bit of string section to this. Other people make claims. If other people make claims, it probably means that no claims are true because other people make claims. I just woke up from a long LSD trip. I woke up cuddling with a goat baby and a distant farm. I don't know how I got there. Other people believe stuff too. Come inside of my tent.
If we are going to argue about this, as to which version of the truth is the correct one, we will always end up in an argument in which the judge and the advocate are the same person. And you wouldn't want that if you were brought into a court of law, would you?
No, that's not even true. You could appeal to logic itself and say, for instance, Muslims believe that the Quran is the uncreated word of God, and yet the Muslim has a dilemma, right? We all heard Jay deploy the Muslim dilemma. Islam needs Christian revelation. for it to be true, and Christianity needs not anything Islam for it to be true. But further, the Muslim holds that we can't know anything about Allah from the Quran. We can't know anything about Allah. So Allah's uncreated foot, no idea what that is. Could be a banana. We have no idea. Because you can't know anything about Allah from the Quran. There's nothing like Allah. So Alan Watts is all, Muslims claim it too.
Because if I say that, well, thinking it all over, I find that Jesus Christ is the greatest being who ever came onto this earth. By what standards do I judge? There is nobody impartial who can decide between all the religions, because more or less everybody has been, in one way or another, influenced by one of them.
No, that's also fallacious. That's a genetic fallacy. Wow, Watts. Wow, how did you get popularized? CIA, maybe? I was dedicated Wattsian for years after I left Christianity. He was the first guy I came across when I Googled my spiritual experience. That's funny. Christopher Shame became a citizen. Thank you, Christopher. All right, let's see what we got here. What the? Okay.
I won't deny anybody's right to hold these opinions.
Allah's uncreated foot is our cousin.
You may indeed believe that the Bible is literally true, and that it was actually dictated by God to Moses and the prophets and the apostles. And that may be your opinion, and you are at liberty to hold it. I don't agree with you. I do believe, on the other hand, that there is a sense in which the Bible is divinely inspired. Divine inspiration is a wisdom which it's very difficult to put into words, like mystical experience. That's divine inspiration. And a person who writes out of that experience could be said to be divinely inspired.
The game music
But
makes
since
it worse. I know, I kind of want to make a parody. All you need is that sort of elevated, very important string section, apparently.
Inspiration always comes through a human vehicle.
It's like a Gnostic George Harrison.
It is liable to be distorted by that vehicle. Now, so therefore, everybody who receives divine inspiration will express it within the limits of what language he knows. I mean language in the sense of what
He's already in what? Syncretism?
sort of terms are available to you. What kind
I always mistake syncretism and perennialism, but I think he's getting into syncretism.
of religion were you brought up with? And you had a mystical experience of the type where you suddenly discover that you are one with God. Then you're allowable to get up and say, I'm Jesus Christ. And lots of people do. Well, the culture that we live in just can't allow that. There were only one Jesus Christ, and sort of you don't look like you were Jesus Christ coming back again. Because it's said in the scriptures that when he comes back, there will be no doubt about it. He'll appear in the heavens with legions of angels, and you're not doing that. You're just old Joe does that we knew years ago. Now you say you're Jesus Christ? Well, he says that when Jesus Christ said he was God, nobody believed him, and you don't believe again. You know, you can't.
This guy's coping hard. It seems like a lot of this stuff comes down to the want and desire to be Jesus Christ, to be Jesus. Now, what's interesting about this desire is that it's still based in a coherent Christian paradigm. It's an inversion, or let's say a perversion of theosis. So from afar, the two statements, I want to be like Jesus Christ and I want to be Jesus Christ, seemingly no difference from afar. But when you get close and you start examining, well, how is it you can be like Christ? You realize that you can't be Christ because that requires a violation of the law of identity. You can't be the person of Christ. There is the person of Christ. Same way I can't be the person of Jameson or Rip. I can't be the person. But these people, these Christ consciousness people, think that Christ is a fragmented fragmented person that's not really a person, but a sense of a being that you can download, right? That Christ consciousness is around you, and if you have the right antennas, you can sort of like use your body to inhabit some of this produce, some of this substance, and remember, that you were always, I just didn't know it. Alan Watts is Christ. So it's always this cope. They want to be Jesus Christ. They don't want to be like him, because that would mean that they're not the authority anymore. They're not the standard. They want to be, so that we all are, right? We're all, that's the view. Keenan, $5. Father Seraphim Rose studied under Watts, right, in San Francisco. He briefly covers his experience in one of his writings. Yeah, I've seen some of that. It would be interesting to pop that up, Keenan.
Can't answer that argument. He says it that way because he is trying to express what happened to him in terms of a religious language which is circumscribed by the Holy Bible. He's never read the Upanishads. He's never read the Diamond Sutra. He's never read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, of the Aing or the Leza. But if he had read the Upanishads, he would have had no difficulty, because it says in the Upanishads, we are all incarnations of God. Only they don't mean by the word God. In fact, they don't use that word.
Well, there you have it, folks. Some other text wrote something about incarnating as God. I guess that's it. Wrap it up. Wrap it up, Orthodox.
They use Brahman. Brahman is not the creator of the world, but the actor of the world in which the Brahman plays a role. Now, my assumption, my opinion is that Jesus of Nazareth was a human being who early in life had a colossal experience of what we call cosmic consciousness.
Oh, jeez. This gives me Jordan Peterson vibes. Oh, yeah. I'm sure Jordan Peterson has a whole shelf of Alan Watts.
It can hit anyone, anytime, like falling in love. And when it hits you, you know it. That there comes this overwhelming conviction that you have mistaken your identity. What I thought was just old Alan Watts was only completely superficial. That I am an expression of an eternal something or other.
Wow.
And that I suddenly understand why, exactly why, everything is the way it is.
Why is that?
It's perfectly clear.
Why?
Furthermore, I feel no longer any boundary between what I do and what happens to me.
So you've said nothing. They always say it's perfectly clear what everything is, and then they forget to tell you what they mean by that.
I feel that everything that's going on is my doing, just as my breathing is. Is your breathing...
Monism. And a hop, skip, and a jump to monism, just like that.
Voluntary or involuntary? Do you do it, or does it happen to you? So you can feel it both ways. But you feel everything like breathing. There is no longer any separate you. There is just this great happening going on. So you can very well understand how people to whom this happens feel genuinely inspired, because very often there goes along with it an extremely warm feeling.
Wow. Add a little violin at the end.
You see, when you look into the eyes of others and truly see, you recognize the divine gazing back, each one playing their part in this immense cosmic performance.
Oh, so you're the divine? I mean, that's the thing. This is where it all falls apart. This is like, see, Marilyn maybe listened to way too many Alan Watts audio files. If you say we look at each other and we're some sort of reflection of the divine, that's not totally wrong, but you need a distinction. So you need the distinction image bearer. You need that distinction of made in God's image, that that there are icons of God himself. And so Christ being the icon of the Father. And so he doesn't have these distinctions, but he has this feeling like many of these Christ consciousness bimbos have, that, oh, we're all God. Well, no, that's not actually true. We're not all God, because this needed to be created. There needs to be a creation. You were dependent on your parents. You're already not God. You were dependent on your previous parents. You were dependent on reality already existing. You're not God if you're dependent on reality already existing.
The disciples didn't entirely grasp this. They were dazzled.
Oh, good. I'm so glad Alan Watts on his LSD trips can come to the realization of what the disciples were lacking many years later.
By the miracles, caught up in the display. They revered Jesus, much like followers often do with their spiritual teachers. And so the Christians said, all right, Jesus of Nazareth was the Son of God, but let it end there, no one else. What?
Well, yeah, because that was revealed. It wasn't like they just said it. It was predicted. You forgot about the predictive part, that it was actually prophesied. You know what I mean? You're forgetting about the prophets. Okay? He thinks like, oh, there was a cool guy named Christ that was just as cool as Alan Watts. And he came about and he said some cool stuff, and they were all, wow, you're like divination realized. All Alan Watts is a massive cope. All he's saying is, Daddy, tell me I'm God. Am I special? I could be Christ. Can I be? Why don't you notice me? Theosis without God is anthroposis, perfect without God. Perfection without God is just relativism masquerading as pseudo-religious. Yeah, it's very common here in these New Age consciousness spaces.
What followed was that
Alan's not even British. Yeah, he sounds like he's doing a bit.
Jesus became the exception, lifted up onto a pedestal.
Well, literally lifted up out of the ground also.
And those who came later, who experienced the same truth and spoke of it during the time the church held power, were almost always punished for it.
No. Those people, let's say they were crafting heretical positions, of course. Were they performing miracles like Christ? No. He forgets all of that part. He forgets, the life of Christ. He forgets everything in between. He just goes, special guy, long hair, pretty cool dude. I'm that, but now I'm getting punished for it. Alex Jones is kicking me off of his show.
Giordano Bruno was burned alive. John Scotus Eriugena was cast out. Meister Eckhart's teachings were condemned. And you see what that means. To elevate Jesus like that is to cut off the message before it begins.
No. If it's heretical message, you cut it out, okay? Like a cancer. We should have cut you out of our society, out of our culture like a cancer, but unfortunately, the time that you emerged, Alan Watts, was rich for your acceptance. Fertile ground for despicable creatures like you.
Gospel, after all, means good news. And I struggle to find the good news in the way the gospel...
Yeah, what's the good news? What is the good news, though? He just says, oh, it just means good news.
...is usually handed down.
Yeah, that's not... The good news isn't just conveyed as the good news, like a direct etymological one-to-one, Alan. The good news would presuppose that we were born into a post-fall reality. That it's possible to trample death. That's the good news. It's possible to trample death and sin. That's the good news. But you don't have a sin distinction, bro. So he's already in a contradiction. The good news from a Christian lens is inextricably tied to this concept of humanity and sin and overcoming and trampling decay and death, right? And yet he's like, oh, the good news, you guys are gatekeeping the good news. No, you're gatekeeping the good news.
We're preserving it. You're gatekeeping it. Just like the one dude who was accusing us of gatekeeping. It was a total opposite.
It presents the revelation of God in the person of Jesus and tells us to follow his path, except he had the advantage of knowing he was the divine Son, of having miraculous powers, of being quite certain he could not be destroyed and would rise again. Yet we are asked to bear our own crosses and walk as he did, without any of that assurance. The tradition, Catholic, Protestant, and fundamentalist alike, gives us a Jesus who is a strange figure, born of a virgin, fully aware of his divine origin, able to perform wonders and untouchable by death. And we are meant to emulate him, though we have none of that clarity ourselves. So
What?
it becomes
What?
in truth.
Yeah, why do we not have the clarity? Okay? I don't know, Alan Watts, could it be that our noose is fogged by sin? No, you don't think sin exists, bro. There's no need for you to perfect anything, dude. He's in a contradiction. Here's the contradiction. Alan Watts and many like him hold the view that where we are is already where we need to be. There's no development. Everything's one moving thing, fluid. Everything's one. All is one. If that were the case, you don't need theosis. You don't need to become like God. There's no place to get to. You're just there. Wherever you are, there you are. Alan Watts. So he holds this view, and then he's saying it's unfair for Christians to develop this position from A to point B, becoming. They're making an unnecessary obstacle course. It's like that can't even be true from his view. $10, thank you so much, John. Alan is taking the bite out of it by equating the expression of God's gospel, the good news, as like a taco truck. You kind of like, be outside the office this. Yeah. Well, it's a technology. All New Age stuff. You guys, it always sounds like New Age stuff is so spiritual, right? There's all these distinctions and whatnot. It's so spiritual, it's so metaphysical, it's so this, it's so that. But when you really get down to it, if you prod them on their epistemology especially, and their metaphysics, it becomes material, it becomes energy, it becomes fractals, it becomes sound waves, cymatics, all of these things. They're materialists. It's wild. They LARP as like these deep spiritual thinkers, but everything comes down to matter in motion for these people.
A religion of the impossible. Christianity turned guilt into a virtue. You can never quite match up. You are always falling short.
That's true.
And the more aware you are of that gap between Christ and yourself, the more virtuous you are made to feel.
Oh, well, it's not about feeling virtuous, you pompous prick. Gosh, I would love to whip him in public. No, it's about humility. It's about lowering yourself and increasing Christ in you. It's not about feeling virtuous. Again, the entire critique now shows his view, which is feeling. Well, I want to feel a different way. Well, no, it's not based on your feeling, bro. It's not based on feeling.
But the true...
Whoa. Holy cow! That is a big super
Good
chat!
morning, Jimmy. Can I ask you a favor? YouTube won't let me comment on your videos for some reason, which is
What?
super annoying. If you can add episode 4 timestamp 3821 to the list, please.
I will reread that. Yes, thank you. I'm wondering why that is. I'm not sure. YouTube's acting funky for everybody. Throwing everybody's numbers off. Throwing their chat numbers off. The view count is off. The latest episode of Ortho Thugs, episode 9, has like 10,000 views. That's not right. Provo says, stop tearing down my early 20s New Age. Have you done that? Provo, have you done an attack on this? Being that you, like many of us, have been in it.
good news was...
If you just listen to the words he's saying, you're just like, what, dude, what a scammer. What an absolute scammer. You know that when the audio was off, he went back into his Rick voice. He was just like, oh yeah, well, that was a good recording, yo. That was a pretty good recording. Oh, one more punch in, Alan. Okay, sorry, hold on. Meow, 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 meow. Okay, I'm ready.
It was never that Jesus alone was the Son of God. It was that he came to awaken everyone to the fact that you are too. I feel then, you see, that it's enormously important that churches stop being talking shops. They become centers of contemplation. What is contemplation? Contemp, it's what you do in the temple. You don't come to the
Okay, Owen Benjamin.
temple to chatter, but to be
Content. What is it to be content? It's what you do in the tent. Words have sounds. Sounds have meaning.
still and know that I am God. Most study of comparative religions that goes on in theological schools has historically been missionary-oriented, to find out the weird ideas of the prospects.
I wonder if my shooting range in town has, the sheet of Alan Watts. I feel like I'm going to call that in. Ed, $5. By Watts's logic, I could just say I had a profound mystical experience in the church. Therefore, orthodoxy is true. That's right. That's right. That's why it's so self-refuting. These people argue, and even the Gnostics, if you go over to I don't know what he's doing now, Marty Leeds, that dude, he runs a Gnostic church. He argues everything's, we're all on the same, it's all the same thing or whatever. And then you're like, well, why are you so upset? I'm Orthodox. Why are you so upset about these organized, holy traditions? It's the same thing with Watts. It's the same exact critique back to them. We can't be wrong about it by their own logic.
So as to be able to undermine them. Because you see, if you know in the first place that you have the true religion, there really is no point in studying any other one. And
that's actually not true either. Nope, that's not true either. In fact, if you held the view that you had the true religion and you were a part of the true church, it would still do you well to study what other people believe, because you can better argue for a standard that makes any other part of another religion true. In Orthodoxy, for example, we have the distinction logos spermatikos. Okay, so logos spermatikos, and the view is that, well, there could be little percolated truths across civilizations, across eras, across cultures, inside of their religious paradigm. It doesn't follow that their religious paradigm is true or whole. It means that humans, there's something that necessarily needs to be true for even small truths to show up across cultures. There needs to be something. So when Alan Watts says, this thing has a true thing, this thing has a true thing, this thing has a true thing, he is necessitating something whole that needs to be true for those things to be even identified as true. But most of the time they grant themselves this. They say, no, it seems true. Doesn't that feel true? That feels true, doesn't it? You go, no, you need a standard outside of you that makes these things true.
you can very quickly find reasons for showing them to be inferior.
For your travel, Steve White, $10, maybe a beer, appreciated. Thank you so much. Thank you for supporting. Yeah, the fundraising will continue. I have a trip to Nashville and, flight and everything. It's a bit. So it's a bit much. And I'm no famous all-star. So it does require some fundraising for me.
Because that was a foregone conclusion. They had to be. And therefore, all arguments about the respective merits of various religions, especially where Christianity is involved, and often where Judaism is involved, and sometimes Islam too, all of which are essentially imperialistic religions.
Oh boy, oh so bad, imperialistic, bad. Ugh.
In all such discussions, the judge and the advocate are usually the same person. Because if, for example, you get into discussions as to whether Buddha was a more profound and spiritual character than Jesus Christ, you arrive at your decision on the basis of a scale of values, which is, of course, Christian.
Oh man, I can't even take it. I'm gonna move to this guy.